Will consumers flock to Microsoft's high-end Surface strategy?
And will Foxtel's Walking Dead lockdown drive Aussies to piracy?
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.
Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm joined by a man who will be running in next week's Melbourne Cup, right up until the stewards tackle him to the ground, that is, Adam Turner. We're also joined by TV Tonight editor David Knox. David, welcome to the show.
Hi guys.
Adam, what's new in tech?
Samsung's swipe and go mobile payment system, Samsung Pay, is now set to work with loyalty cards, letting users cut down on the number of cards they're forced to carry around. 18 loyalty partners are on board for the launch, including Dimmicks, Toys R Us and Red Rooster, but the technology should work with most loyalty cards.
Nintendo has announced its replacement console for the Wii U. Formerly known as NX, it's a highly modular, somewhat portable device known as the Switch, which Nintendo plans to have on store shelves by March next year. Reception to the Switch has been mixed, with many confused about its tiny slide-out controls and the question of quite how powerful it will be and what that would mean for available games titles and battery life.
Australia's consumer watchdog, the ACCC, is looking into the issue of mobile roaming in regional Australia, and it's considering forcing Telstra to make its network available to competitors in areas where only Telstra's network is available. Not surprisingly, Telstra is opposed to the idea, as its extended coverage is one of its major drawcards for regional customers, while rival Vodafone says the change is very important for opening up competition outside the big cities.
Apple's announced that it's delaying the release of its heavily hyped AirPods, which were originally due to be available by the end of October. Apple's playing mum about precisely why the AirPod Bluetooth headphones have been delayed, with guesses ranging from production problems to audio interference issues. Or maybe Apple's just keeping all its shiny toys to itself. So Adam, Samsung's now tying loyalty cards into its Samsung Pay mobile payments app. Is this going to be a great thing for Australian consumers?
I think it is, because I'm not that interested in using my phone as a credit card, particularly because everywhere's already I've got PayWave credit cards and it's just as easy to do that. But what I do hate is carrying around loyalty cards and coffee cards and all these other cards. And if I could get my phone to do that, I'd be more likely to use it than the credit card thing. So I think it's a smart move.
The range of providers they've got for launch, though, they don't have a lot of the big players on board. There's none of your Flybuys or Woolworths reward dollars, or for that matter, airline frequent flyer miles. It's smaller not tiny outlets, but it's smaller outlets. It's your Toys R Us's and coffee clubs and so on. I get that appeal, I suppose, but I think it'd have a lot more appeal if it tied into those things that people really do actually, go for.
Yeah, they're kind of missing that big flagship customer, and that's when Apple had things that tied into whatever that thing is on Apple that will show up cards. They had airlines and stuff like that. So I do think that they need that big ticket item to get people in. David, are you an iPhone or a Samsung user? Do you use your phone to pay for things? Are you interested in loyalty card stuff?
I have an iPhone. No, I don't use my phone to pay for things. I love my tap and go with my credit card, but that's about as far as that goes. Loyalty cards I don't use, except for the airlines. With the frequent flyers and the Virgin one as well. But I don't have the standalone cards. Every time I see the loyalty card sort of offered to me, and I look at the conditions of how much you have to actually earn for something, it just puts me off. It just deters me. I think, is this really worth it? And so, and for the privacy that those things usually require, and I worry about all the spam and stuff that will come with the loyalty cards, I tend to not opt for them.
Yeah, that's one other thing that puts me off as well, is that exactly what am I handing to you in terms of, why is this information so valuable to you? But I do. For me, it's just coffee car. I'm a coffee guy. I've got 3 or 4 coffee shops that I like to go to. Some of them are still old school, so they've got the little cardboard and you tick the number, and your 10th coffee is free. I'm not sure if they're in a hurry to upgrade. So when they've got the hole punch through your phone, what are you going to do, Adam? Yes, exactly. That is going to be a little bit of a problem. But some of the bigger coffee chains are already using loyalty, swipe loyalty cards. So I can see. I think I would actually use it for that before I would ever actually swipe my phone to pay for something. So Adam, while I can't say that I'm a huge fan of the show per se, if you're an Australian fan of The Walking Dead, there's been some fairly bad news for you this week, hasn't there? Yes, well, apparently some people didn't survive the series return. I don't watch the show either, but the fact that's not the point, the fact that I don't watch the show, because the real bad thing that's happened is that Foxtel have locked it down. They've done the same thing that they did to Game of Thrones a couple of years ago. The deal is now in place that it used to be that if you liked The Walking Dead and you didn't want to sign up for Foxtel, the next day you could buy the episode from the iTunes Store or Google Play or Fetch TV. So keep up pretty much up to date. Yes, and now this season, as of season 7, can't do that anymore. So Foxtel Play or Foxtel Home subscription is the only way to do this. But what makes it even worse is they didn't actually bother to tell anybody about this up front. They just waited for fans to go, why isn't it on iTunes? So David, you're the TV expert. You've been following this stuff for a long time. Do you think that perhaps they could have handled this better? Or are we going to see more of these kind of things in the future?
It's interesting that you say they didn't tell anybody, because it's true. I had people on my website asking me if I knew when it was going to become available through things like iTunes. I suppose that they remember the reaction that they got when it was announced that they did the Game of Thrones deal with HBO. So I suppose they were mindful of that. I haven't been able to get a straight answer out of anybody this week as to who made the decision. From what I can ascertain, guys, it seems to be sort of 3 parties in collusion here, and I'm saying this purely from a speculative point of view perspective, because, as I said, no one's given me an answer. But
they won't talk to me either, if that makes you feel better.
Look, the key players here are Foxtel, are FX Networks, which is not owned by Foxtel. It is owned by Fox in the US, so pretty closely aligned there. Yeah. But it's strictly speaking, it's not a Foxtel-owned channel. And then the third one, of course, is E1 Distributors, who are responsible for where it goes in Australia. So they're the ones who will be holding back any DVDs and indeed any rights through things like iTunes and Apple TV and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, look, it's pretty clear that this is a. Foxtel likes to look at shows as being premium draw cards. So you look to a Game of Thrones, you look to a Walking Dead, you look to these big shows that attract the buzz, attract the chatter, as ways to encourage people to show why they should be Foxtel subscribers. But I agree with you, it doesn't send out a good PR message when you're then turning around and saying, well, not only do we have it exclusively, but we're not going to let anyone else have it until we're done with it.
Yeah, so they're basically punishing people who were doing the right thing and paying for it when they could have just as easily gone out and pinched it. They've now said to those people, you can't have that legit option anymore. And then they've got the nerve to complain when people go out and steal stuff. I think they're kind of shitting themselves in the foot there.
Okay, so if I can play devil's advocate for a second here. If you're Stan, for example, you've got an exclusive on Ash vs Evil Dead. If you're Netflix, you've got all the Marvel properties, for example.
Yeah.
How is that different? How is what Foxtel's doing, having an exclusive to themselves, all that different, especially given the new Foxtel Play pricing that's coming in from the 1st of December, which cuts that price, and I could be mistaken here, but I think The Walking Dead is on that entry-level package. I'm perfectly happy to be wrong
on. $15 package, yeah.
So, I'm not saying this is my personal view, but how does that differ? How does that differ? Just to spin it on its head.
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I suppose it differs in terms of what the audience has been traditionally used to. Exactly. If the audience in the past has been able to buy Walking Dead a day later or 7 days later or whatever it happens to be after its broadcast, if we're changing that, that's going to get a reaction.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. The difference is with the things like the Marvel stuff on Netflix is that's the way it's always been. They didn't draw you in one way and then take it away from you. To start, I mean, I have a theory that when you start a TV show, you form a little bit of we'll say a social contract with the viewer.
Totally.
You expect certain things from the viewer in terms of, the way that they'll watch the show and that they'll do it a legal way and that they'll come back and keep watching. But in return, I think you then have a little bit of a responsibility to the viewer to, not canon after one season, to continue to make it available to them in a reasonable way. So,
unless you're a sci-fi show on Channel 9.
Yes, exactly. But I think the makers of the show and all the middlemen who bring it to air form a bit of a contract there, and I don't think they're holding up their end of the bargain when they let people watch The Walking Dead this way for 6 seasons, and then turn around and say, "Oh, by the way, now we've changed the rules on you."
Yeah, and especially if they're not willing to admit that and discuss that and discuss the decision making around that, it's not a good look.
No, what really frustrates me is that the retailers won't even talk about it. So your Apples and your Google Plays don't want to talk about it when it's their customers who deserve an explanation, because they could previously buy it from them and now they can't. But Apple and Google don't even have the guts to name and shame the people behind the scenes who've made this happen. They don't want to talk about it, and that's part of what's wrong with the system. Is the producers and the middlemen are so powerful that they can screw over the end customers and screw over the retailers, and the retailers are too afraid to even tell their customers what's going on, or say, "Yeah, you're right, sorry, that's not cool."
Are you actually used to getting lengthy explanations on the record from Apple and Google? Because we've both been tech journalists for a long time. I don't recall it happening all that often.
More Google than Google's usually more forthcoming than Apple. But the fact that they're not even prepared to tell their customers. Fetch TV, I found, had one post on their Facebook page where someone asked about it and they said, yes, this is what will happen. And according to Fetch TV, actually, according to this one post, that when they take the season break halfway through in December, iTunes and the others will be allowed to sell the first half of the season. So they don't have to wait until all of season 7 is run until April. But that's only what I've heard secondhand through Facebook, which someone found the link for me and shared it with me on Twitter, because no one will talk to me. That's bad customer service when no one in that supply chain is prepared to give their paying customers any idea of what's actually happening. And I had the same experience as David. I don't watch the show myself. My tip-off was when people who follow me on Twitter contacted me and said, "Can you find out what's happening with this show, because no one will tell us anything."
Yeah. I mean, I did watch the show. It was a particularly violent episode, but that's another topic. But like Adam, I found that most of the people I was in contact with over this question this week, and I mean, it is only we are only a couple of days into this, so in that respect, I still think it is a bit early days. But I found that everybody was pretty much passing the buck, saying you would have to talk to another company, and it became a bit of a dog chasing its tail this week. So not great. Not great PR.
It's an interesting and critical time for Foxtel as well, of course, because with Play taking over the Presto positioning, their low-cost streaming solution, they're going all out on the charm offensive. They've made a whole bunch of HBO shows. The first episode of Free, that sentence made sense in my head, but I'm sure the listeners can understand what I was trying to say there. So Westworld and a bunch of drama and comedy series. Yeah. You can watch the first episode of those as a kind of taster. So they're playing Foxtel giveth and Foxtel taketh away, but will they ultimately win people over with this kind of strategy, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good move. I don't know whether it's going to work in the long term, whether that's going to turn potential subscribers into paying customers, but that is a positive step, and it's very rare. I'm trying to think of the last time they have done this before, but I think it was so long ago. I think the Night Of might have been another one that they did that with, but I think it's a good move to offer these shows. Westworld, though, you'd probably want more than one episode so that you understand what's going on in it.
What the hell's going on?
You need at least 2 Westworlds, I think.
Right, so Alex, we have new Microsoft Surface gear, but we're not just talking new little Surface tablets. What are we getting from?
Well, we're not talking new little Surface tablets at all. They're playing in the pricey end of the pool this time round. They've updated their Surface Book, which was the 2-in-1 laptop tablet hybrid with the funky hinge that they first released last year, with new processors, new GPUs, claimed 30% better battery life, and much higher price points. If you want one of the new Surface Books, which will go on sale on the 10th of November, they start at $3,799 all the way up to $5,199 for the top tier 1TB model.
Ouch.
Yeah, they're not inexpensive. They also announced their first effective desktop product, the Surface Studio. And the best way to describe this is if you know what the Apple iMac looks like, think of that but much thinner. The design on this thing is really quite fascinating. However, again, the price point is going to be high. They haven't actually announced Australian pricing for that, and it won't be available here officially until at least next year. But based on the US list price, we will pay more than $4,500 for one of those things. So these are high-end systems for high-end users, or at least people with very, very high-end budgets. And they're very blatantly attacking the market that's buying lots of Apple gear. Their marketing pitch for the new Surface Books are that they're more powerful than a MacBook. Now, that may be true, and I should point out that we're recording this just prior to Apple holding its own event where it's likely to launch new MacBooks. In fact, it's pretty much inevitable at this stage, and so that could be a claim that only holds true for 24 hours. We don't know as we're recording this, but they're certainly going for that premium market, and there was some research this week that actually suggested that that premium tablet and 2-in-1 market, that is where Australians are buying systems. But it's still kind of expensive. Would you guys buy one?
Not at that price, no way.
No, I'm trying to think of what it would do. It's way beyond just an iPad substitute. It sounds like it's a really specialist thing if you work in multimedia or design or something like that. Is that a fair
they're pitching towards the design crowd. They're quite high end. They're high end processors, plenty of memory. Their big pitch around this as well is their new release of Windows 10 due to come next year, free upgrade if you've already got Windows 10 as usual, which will focus strongly on 3D content creation, and this ties in to the HoloLens product. They want people creating lots and lots of 3D models, and the only way you do that, of course, is if you provide the software to do it. So 3D modeling is going to come to all of the Office apps, and kind of amusingly, if you've been using Windows for years and years and years, it's coming to Paint. They actually spent a serious quantity of time in their...
Really? Are they bringing Clippy back as well?
I swear I'm not making this up. They spent a serious amount of time at their launch event going through Paint 3D, which is their new hyped up version of Paint. And Paint for the longest time, of course, has been, the not just the poor man's Photoshop, but essentially the hobo's Photoshop. But they're seriously pushing that.
Sleeping under a bridge Photoshop.
They're seriously pushing that forward as a much more powerful image editing tool, especially for 3D content creation. So these aren't casual things, and these aren't just iPad replacements. They're quite serious PCs.
Are some of these things like the 2-in-1 hybrid things where it's a tablet and then you attach a keyboard?
Yeah, well, the Surface Book itself is effectively, it's a full notebook where the screen happens to come off. And it's touchscreen, it's Windows 10, of course, because it's Microsoft. The first generation of that was a really interesting idea and had a really nice flexible hinge. I found the early software, and I certainly wasn't alone in this, the early software was a bit bodgy on that, and then sometimes it's a little too hard to actually remove the screen because it has a very strong magnetic lock, which was meant to protect it, but quite often instead kind of held it in place like a chastity belt. They apparently fixed that up way after I'd done my review of it, and hopefully the second generation will be a lot better than that. The Surface Studio itself is a full-on desktop machine. It's not something you're actually going to carry around with you in any way, shape or form.
So I've never been so 100% sold on these hybrid devices that can't decide whether they're a notebook or whether they're a tablet. David, you said that you're an iPad user. Do you ever hook a keyboard up to it? Do you ever wish it was more than an iPad? Or do you ever want to rip the keyboard off your MacBook?
Well, I do have one of those sort of covers that has a little keypad as part of that. Yes, I do like that on my iPad Mini. I hate trying to type on the iPad just on the Surface. If you're writing anything lengthy, it's just redonkulous.
Horrible.
So I would use the keyboard for that. Yeah, but I mean I'm a fan of any kind of device that you can just pick up and go with. I love my my Mac, if you know, for many years I had the old PC laptop and changed over to the Mac, and I just love being able to close the lid, pick it up, go and work, in a cafe for a couple of hours.
Well, it's the same as Alex and I, because the three of us are content creators, and because a lot of what we do with it online, the ability to work anywhere, anytime is pretty crucial.
Yeah, I just found the time it took just to shut down, the old laptop was driving me bananas. And then the weight of that, trying to lug that around, So, I don't know the Surface, but clearly it's something that's designed to be portable and sexy. But it sounds like this is pitched at people who are high-end designers, not a domestic, not the home office kind of arrangement.
I guess the thing with these, though, as well, is the prices on all of these are going up. As I said earlier, there's some research this week that said that there's a big uptick in the 2-in-1 and tablet market from people buying premium tablets and 2-in-1s. But if you look on the Apple side of the fence, it's no better. As I said, this is pre-Apple's announcement of its new MacBook Pros, but based on what they've done with the existing MacBook models and the fact that it looks like, and I am guessing here, that the MacBook Air probably isn't long for this world, they're pushing the bar up towards those kind of $2,000-$3,000 laptops as well. They seem keen, Apple's always been keen to play in that space, but they seem ever more keen to push those prices further higher and higher, and of course push their profit margins up. Would this make, a huge difference if it were a MacBook Pro with this, purported new OLED function key bar on it? Would that excite you more?
I'm not thrilled about the idea of a thing that doesn't have a physical power button. I got the impression that the power button's part of the OLED. I think a power button that you can't physically hold down on your finger when the whole thing craps itself is a bad idea. I don't know about anybody else, but whether you're a Mac or a Windows person, sometimes you've got to, kick the hamster and do that.
I'm not sure about the power button. What about function keys? I mean, there's part of my brain that says, yeah, look, I use the functions of my function keys, volume and screen brightness and stuff from time to time if I'm out and about, but I don't use them as function keys all that often, so possibly they are cuttable. But the reality for those devices, and again, I have no special insider knowledge prior to the event, but the reality for those devices is there is no way that Apple will be selling MacBook Pros cheap. And I would imagine, in fact, they're probably going to be looking at that Surface Book pricing and going, ooh, can we get away with that? Well, that just about wraps up another episode of Vertical Hold. Remember, if you've got any thoughts or comments, hit us up in the comment section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page. David, thanks for joining us.
Terrific. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening, and remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button.
Vertical Hold is proudly brought to you by Alcatel.